All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Booth, episode 3. Today, we are sitting down with one of my good friends in the wedding industry and even beyond that, about to be legally part of my family here. It was supposed to be this year, but this damn COVID. Mr. Matt Kleck with Mkleck Photography. How you doing, brother?
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having us. Me.
You. Absolutely, man. I was like, you have to, it'd be wrong of me not to have you as my first guest.
Awesome. The guinea pig.
The guinea pig, yeah. So obviously this episode is focusing on photography, and you being the first guest that we're actually sitting down with who is outside of Erie Encore Entertainment, we're going to try to dive into a few different things here with, of course, photography, but I want to hear your story. I want to know, how you got into this, how, you've gotten to where you are in the world of photography, because for anybody who does not know you, you do way more than just shoot weddings. We were just talking about beforehand this year, unfortunately weddings went on the back burner a little bit, but there were a lot of things that went up this year for you. So, super exciting stuff.
Yeah.
So Matt, how you got started in the wonderful world of photography?
I actually first got into photography having to do with car photography. So back in 2003, 2004, I had a Volkswagen GTI, had a bunch of work done to it. I was going to car shows up and down the East Coast with it. And at the time, I had a point and shoot camera. Anything I was taking didn't look great. Made friends in the car show scene. And I saw people with DSLR cameras, and I was like, man, the photos that they're doing is just way better than anything I can do. So saved up, got my first DSLR camera, and I was taking the same photos I was with the point and shoot camera. I'm like, this is terrible. Like, I just spent all this money, and the photos aren't doing it. Like, so I became self-taught, and I would say, take this bottle here. I would throw my camera on manual, and I would take pictures of something on a table, change the settings around, learning aperture and ISO and shutter speed and what each one of those contributed to a photo. And I was like, okay, I'm starting to get the hang of this. And then lenses, the kit lens that comes with a camera is pretty much garbage. Nothing sharp. And so I started saving up. I got my first entry level but better nifty 50 camera lens, and the depth of field of that was a lot different. It was sharper, and I was like, okay, starting to get into this a little bit more. And then at the time, I was working at Arrowhead Wine Cellars.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was working in the office there, and I started doing some of their product work, so wine bottles, things like that. And then Facebook, I was helping with their page then, and when like Wine and Chocolate Weekend and those types of events where people would come through, I would take group photos of people and say, hey, you can find these photos on the Facebook fan page, and tag yourself and share it. And so then that started with me photographing people. And then, friends were like, hey, can you do family pictures? And I was like, well, I could. And
I have a camera.
Yeah. Have a camera. We'll travel. But so this is probably around 2005 now.
Oh, wow.
So I shot my first wedding in 2010. And
Ooh,
yeah,
man, 10 years.
Well, yeah.
That up, baby.
And it was funny because I was inquired about it, and I said, I don't shoot weddings. Like, I won't do weddings. Too many things can go wrong, and I have a camera. I have a few lenses. It's not something I wanted to get into. And we just kept going back and forth. And finally, I was like, if I could find someone to shoot this wedding with me, I would do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not promising anything. So I found another local photographer, and we tag teamed the wedding, delivered the images. They loved them. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this is something I could get into. And I saved up more money and got a full frame DSLR camera. Shout out to Canon. That's what I use.
Yeah.
And from
Product sponsor us.
yes.
Everything we can right now. I'm just kidding.
So I had 2 camera bodies now and a few lenses, and it progressed from there.
Wow. See, now I thought almost kind of how the world, I guess, of tattooing would go. Like, I thought you, and this is just me being stupid, but I thought you probably like interned with somebody and like, did that whole apprenticeship style of getting into something. But it's kind of sound. I mean, you were
In the grand scheme of things, I probably should have done that.
Yeah.
The first couple of weddings were friends, and I was very upfront. I'm not guaranteeing anything because this isn't what I do. And then as the years went by, I always investing more. So now I have 4 camera bodies and enough lenses for all of them. And if God forbid my camera dies in the middle of a bride walking down an aisle, I have my second camera right there ready to go and not skip a beat. So, but yeah, I became a business in 2011. So that's when I became an LLC.
okay.
So
Is
that
that
was-
when the Mkleck Photography, the name of that started up, or?
The name was like bouncing around
Yeah.
earlier than that, but I would say maybe 2008.
Yeah.
So like I was photographing for quite a few years before I even thought of becoming Mkleck Photography.
Okay. Wow, well, that's a pretty awesome backstory, man. I knew there was something with cars and the world. I had no idea about the winery though.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So from there, lighting is so important with photography. So like with product work, I was using shop lights and a homemade diffuser, so like to soften the light. But everyone starts somewhere, and I had shop lights laying around. So then from there, I moved to speed lights, and then from there, I went from studio lights, and so it's just progression. And so yeah, that's
Nice, man. Well, that's a good story. I know you probably don't get the opportunity to tell that very often, but I
not
mean,
so much.
yeah, that's a lot of, I think everybody's, at least with, photography, videography, and, DJing, it takes a long time of just putting your own money into investing into getting better because, you can have a semi-okay camera and take semi-okay pictures, or you can take great pictures, but if you don't have the right equipment, you're not going to go very far. So taking that time, it's not something that I think happens overnight with any of those photography, DJing, anything like that. The time to get where, you end up in an LLC position like you did, it's not just your skill set, but it's just the long investment process that you got to take to put into your craft.
Sure.
Awesome, man. So I want to touch a little bit because we haven't really talked much about, not much like we've done 1,000 episodes yet, but we didn't talk about it much on the last episode, but this year, COVID, it's hit everybody pretty hard in this industry. So a lot of the episodes, we're going to talk about kind of how it affected everybody. You got through it in a good way, but
Yes.
as far as weddings go, how has this?
So I have 2 points of this. We were planning our own wedding this year, and then obviously being a wedding photographer. So I had quite a few brides postponed to next year, just moved the wedding totally to next year. Some went forward with a smaller wedding this year and are doing a reception next year.
Yeah.
And others just, we're going to do a small wedding and that's it. Like, we're going to move on with life, and the important people that we need to be here at this wedding are going to be here.
Yeah.
And that's that. So it was definitely it was weird this year. Luckily, all of my brides who postponed to next year, I had those dates available still. So I was able to cover all of my 2020 brides. I've had to turn away some people that were booking for 2021
Right.
just because these people, my 2020 brides, they they have a deposit and like
Yeah.
they moved and
That was like, man, that was probably one of the hardest things is, I tried to stay, and I think a lot of people ended up having it, in the mindset of staying optimistic. Like, yes, it is going to be a big loss. And if you look at it that way, like, we're missing out on all these weekends that we would be booking events next year. But, in the grand scheme of things, if you're looking at it in the optimistic way, there's still work coming, just keep it positive. But yeah, it was.
Yeah, April, May, I was just thinking to myself, I was like, what is this summer going to be like?
Yeah.
I mean, not even just weddings, just photography in general.
Yeah.
And then come to August, September, October, I ended up being the busiest I've ever been since starting photography.
Yeah.
A lot of high school senior photos, family photos. Family photos just a lot more too because it's a sense of normalcy.
Right.
Like we're getting our family pictures done. That's something normal in this year. So
yeah, I want to touch a little bit on that side of stuff too, because that was what I was getting at earlier, that you've tapped into a little bit of more, keeping busy throughout the year with the senior pictures and the family shoots and stuff. Is that something that you have always kind of done, or is it just kind of taken off with your?
Yeah, so I would probably say I started off more with family photos before getting into weddings.
Right.
And then that allowed me to interact with people.
Right.
And so my people skills improved on that. You could probably ask any of my past brides and how easy it was to work with me. Like, on the day of a wedding, there's so many possibilities that could not go in our favor.
Right.
And we just roll with the punches. And we try to keep everything on track as much as we can. But in the grand scheme of things, we're there to document how the day unfolds.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of times once the bride and groom get their final images, they're like, oh, I didn't even know you got that. And like, I tell them, your wedding day is not, I don't want you to remember it as, oh, this is where Matt told us to do this or Matt told us to do that. Like, I'm documenting how the day unfolded.
Yeah.
And I don't want you just to think, oh, yeah, this is where he told us to do this, that, and the other thing. So.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've focused a lot more on the past couple years is, you get a bridal party that comes in and they're 10 people deep and you've got to rally them all up. Well, I have a small part of having to rally people up and, coordinate that. But when it comes to like planning out the day, the timeline and everything like that, it all pretty much lies on the photographer.
Yeah, so what I usually do is we work backwards. So if we typically don't stay till the end of the wedding, unless there is like a sparkler send-off or something like that needs to be documented, because dancing photos can get very repetitive towards the end of the night. So
you don't know what you're gonna end up taking pictures of.
Yeah, they can be incriminating.
But
so like if someone has an 8-hour package, we'll work backwards. So the reception ends at 10. Well, maybe we are there till 8:30, and then we work backwards from there. And then once you start piecing the day together that way, you can see if you need to add an extra hour or move to a 10-hour package or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, so that timeline for the day is, I mean, you've done so many of them, you pretty much know how you're going to lay that out. And I think anybody who is looking into, getting married and booking a photographer, they might have that, that kind of blueprint in their head of how that goes. But as far as what else goes into a photographer shooting a wedding, I had no idea until I really got into the business.
For your wedding.
Yeah, and for my wedding too. When I, booked, I'm like looking at the paperwork. I'm like, it cost how much to get a photographer to take pictures? But when you actually find out how much goes into it, and that's kind of what I want to let these people know. It's like, what else when, you get the contract signed, what happens from there?
So, I mean, like you just said, some people look at, all right, an 8-hour wedding package costs what? And you got to go back from there. So the countless emails back and forth, the first meeting, engagement photos, keeping in contact from then till the wedding.
Right.
And then the day of the wedding, we're there earlier. We're all geared up. All of cameras are time synced together. We kind of go over our own game plan. Typically, me as the primary shooter is with the bride and bridesmaids. My second photographer goes with the groom and groomsmen because, let's be real, it's the bride's day, not necessarily the groom's day.
I'm trying like my best to not be so like leaning towards saying brides on this show, but it
is.
It is. There's no way of getting around that. It's
And
the bride show.
With planning our own wedding, I know exactly this is Megan's big day, and I'm just along for the ride.
Yeah. Even though you're probably the one who knows a lot of the answers
Sure.
to a lot of the stuff, and like I've seen this go really bad when this happens.
I'll put in my 2 cents when
like
I'm like, well, what about this?
Yeah.
Not saying you're wrong, but what if we try this?
Yeah. I went through the same thing. Obviously, she's like, I mean, she hadn't been to a wedding.
Sure.
Then maybe 2 prior to us being together, and I'm like doing the same thing. I'm like, oh well, it's a good idea, but that's the one downside about being in this business, I guess, or upside, however you want to look at it. But yeah, and then you guys leave.
Yeah.
Post-production, post-wedding.
So after an 8 or 10 hour wedding package, I'm dumping 3,000 to 4,000 photos that we've taken.
That's how many it ends up usually?
Typically, yeah.
Sheesh.
Because I have 2 cameras. My second photographer has 2 cameras. And I've always looked at memory is cheap. So I would rather overshoot anything and get the photos we need than miss something. So I have terabytes upon terabytes worth of
I've seen
storage.
your pile of hard drives. Yeah, it's not lying.
But I always after a wedding, come home, dump all my memory cards. They go to one hard drive. Immediately after that, they go to my network drive. So they're in 2 spots, actually 3 if you include the memory cards too.
Right.
And then that's always the night of the wedding, regardless of time, regardless of how tired I am. That's my go-to because I have a degree in computer networking, so that's what my degree is.
Oh,
and so I cannot stress redundancy of backing things up. At any given time, a bride and groom's photos are in 3 locations. At the end of every year, I dump everything I shot that year to an external drive, and I have a safety deposit box at PNC. So I have off-site storage, I have online storage, and I have on-site storage. So, yeah.
So the next president, who, if they ever end up watching this and they need somebody to hire on to hide any of their stuff, this is your guy. Wow. Well, no, that's good, man. I mean, we try to do that too with music, as can store it as many places as you can.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the middle of a wedding and your laptop dies, we
have backup, backup hard drives, stuff
Sure.
just on the computer of folder, that's gonna get us through the night. Might not be what we want to play, but
Sure.
You got to stay, prepared for the worst.
And for the most part, no one's gonna even know.
Right,
And,
exactly.
That's the same. Like I've dropped it was a high school senior shoot, but I dropped a camera lens onto concrete. Broke. That was
like this year, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I remember that post.
And in my mind, I'm.
Yeah.
But I played it cool. I used the rest of the lenses that I had on me, and it was a forced upgrade, I guess. I got a brand new lens, and it was a costly mistake.
Yeah,
but
hey, we've all been there.
The client had, other than like, oh my gosh, is that okay? I was like, yeah, I think so. Set it back in my pouch and continue on.
Yeah, wipe the tears off behind your back so they can't see it. But we've all had that happen. A couple other things I wanted to talk about are trends, and by trends I mean, in a way, I guess, a trademark that you do and stuff that you've been seeing coming, been seeing leaving, as far as the style of what people are liking to be shot for their. Because one thing, I guess, trademark-wise, I should break that down, is one thing I love looking for when you put up your teasers is, and I don't know if you probably do, and now it's just like clockwork. You don't even think about it, but you come in and you have your light stand. Pick a corner, and that shot of the first dance that you do. I don't see, I mean, maybe I'm just not looking forward in other photographers' things, but that shot from you, that stands out to me as like one of your signature shots that light's behind him, it's casting, and it makes him almost like a silhouette.
Sure.
Is that something that you try to do?
Yeah. So a long time ago, I learned that you have to take your flash off camera. Anytime you're using an on-camera flash, especially during a wedding, it's very direct, and you have no depth or anything like that. As soon as you can move that flash off camera and then set up 1, 2, maybe even 3 flashes, myself and my second photographer have full control of those 3 lights. We can adjust the power individually. We can shut off certain lights. So if I'm wanting a look that has 3 lights shot, and my second photographer just needs that one backlight, we can do that on the fly. Learning that was huge, and how lighting affects every photo.
Oh, that's crazy.
I typically won't go on a shoot without some sort of light. Depending, I guess, like if you were in a wooded area, you wouldn't necessarily need a light because your background is dark. So for me, I don't like it when the sky is completely blown out of a photo. I like, because that's not what you saw there. Like that sky has depth and clouds and color and whatnot, and I want that to be represented in the photo as well. So that's when you have to bring in some type of light, and typically if it's a sunnier day, you need a pretty beefy light. So like a studio light instead of just a flash. And I'll either bring my lovely assistant, Megan, on, or if she's not available, I'll use a light stand of some sort. And I typically, very, very rarely do I go on a shoot without some sort of off-camera light.
Yeah. And that's cool, too, because that, I guess, would be a trend that is, at least I've seen a lot, is a lot of people just have been on that natural light kick with pictures, and whether it's their pictures on Instagram or whatever, everybody's kind of geared to that, which, attacking it with that extra added bump of light, which nowadays, I mean, even the light that we're using now, it hits a color like a natural light, like it's like you can make it look like you're outside and not even notice. Yeah,
so everything is like daylight balanced as far as light goes. You can gel it. Sometimes I had a senior who wanted a sunset, and we were at Frontier Park, and we didn't kind of time it correctly because Frontier sits in kind of a valley.
Right.
So the sun was still up, but in Frontier it was set. So I threw an orange gel, or it was a CTO gel, on one of my flashes, threw it back in the woods quite a ways, and I was able to mimic sunlight.
Oh,
so there was the sun. It was more of the sunlight hitting her rather than like, oh, there's an actual sun in the background.
So you're kind of able to direct it where you want it.
Yep. So I've done that on a few senior shoots, and there are some times where it's a little more noticeable, and other times it's like, oh yeah, the sun was setting in that photo. No, it wasn't. It was a overcast day.
Yeah.
So
tricked you.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, that's awesome. Cool. Another thing I wanted to touch on, which this is a big one, and kind of what this show is focused around, planning out your wedding day. When somebody is looking to book a photographer, which is probably one of the first things they should look into, because of, like you said, the engagement photos that normally you guys bundle in with your package, what are some things that they, right off the bat, should be either looking for, paying attention for, if they're on the fence of deciding for a photographer?
Well, typically when someone reaches out to me, they'll start off by saying, "I've seen your work and I love what you do." So right off the bat, they already know what my style is, and that's what they want. If someone was just shopping around, it comes down to what style do you like and what do you think is going to be around, or is a certain style going to date your photos? But if someone likes that real light, airy look, then that's typically not my style,
Right,
and
right.
I don't think I would get that inquiry for the wedding.
Is that something you kind of cover when you're?
Yeah. So if someone reaches out on my website, it comes into my email through something different. So then I have some saved emails that have lists of online teaser galleries of my weddings on like Facebook, where they can just browse through and see everything. And then that gives them a better idea of what my style is. And yeah.
Yeah. So first things first, find your style.
Yep. What
Find
what you're looking for. Also, what your budget is too.
Yeah.
From a wedding day, it was important for us to first find a photographer, a videographer, a venue, and a DJ. Those were the main things. The rest of the things kind of fall in place.
Right.
But I knew who we wanted for a wedding photographer. I knew the DJ we wanted because you're a guest, clearly.
Yeah.
And,
I'll be there. That's for sure. We'll do a podcast in the aftermath of
Oh
that
no,
one.
that's gonna be incriminating.
You're bringing that camera too. Yeah. So, into price wise, that dives into this next thing
Sure.
I did want to ask you. So, when price becomes an issue, and people might be on the fence with their budget. Sometimes it's just they weren't even.
Sure.
It's a curveball that they were not like. Oh, okay. Clearly, we need to rethink what we're doing here as far as what we want out of a wedding. But if somebody's on the fence, and then that topic that I hear a lot, it even comes into the DJ world, but we've got, a family friend, a cousin who's a good photographer. They've got a camera. They're going to be there. There's only one of them, so there's not two people shooting.
Sure.
What do you think about? I mean, when it comes to a wedding day and.
So my biggest thing is after the wedding's done and years down the road, you'll have the memories like, oh yeah, that was a good time. We had a great day. But what are you going to have to symbolize your wedding? Photos, video.
Yeah.
That was one thing. We wanted a videographer.
Yeah.
I know a lot of my brides, I would say it's probably like 50-50 who do a videographer as well as a photographer. But that was definitely something Megan and I, we wanted a videographer and a photographer.
Yeah.
Because after everything's said and done, that's what you have to look back on your day.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons I enjoy doing what I do so much is at the end of the day, they are going to have my photos for the rest of their lives
Yep.
to capture their day. And
Yeah.
it's really neat. Like I've done weddings, and then those turn into family photos and maternity photos and 1-year photos and all that. So I've gone into people's houses whose weddings I've shot, and then family photos, and seeing my work hung on their walls. It's just like, yeah, this is awesome. Like this is what I love about my job.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And that's
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, and that's probably why, taking a little bit more time to think about that photographer budget, it means a lot because unless, you're the relative and they're picking you, if it's a family friend who just got their first DSLR camera and, they're kind of new with photography, but they know how to do a few things.
Sure.
You want them to be a guest, even if it's a friend or whatever, you might want them to be a guest at the wedding, but two, it's like, when it comes to photography, at least you get what you pay for, and it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, we can go into whatever scenario. The Masonic Temple, super dark down there. Is a natural light photographer or cousin so-and-so that just got a new camera. Is that going to work out for them? Or like typically we have to set up 3 or 4 lights in that area.
Yeah, and a family friend might not know where that venue is. They might have never been there. And, a bride and groom are stressing too much about the day to begin with. They're not going to remember, be like, oh, well, just so you guys know, it's a little dark down there. They don't have this, that, and the other thing.
Do you have a flash?
Yeah, yeah.
A flash in general.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, great. Well, I think that is close to everything I had written down on my handy dandy sheet. I need these sheets, people. This is new for me. So, knowing what to ask
Hey,
is very important.
Having some type of guideline, it helps out.
Yeah. I kind of was like, should I be like, what's it, Fallon? Those news shows where they do that all the time.
The teleprompter's behind me, right?
Yeah,
just
it's right
look over
behind
my-
you.
yeah.
That's where I've been looking the whole time. I don't think that there's anything else, Matt. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about, dive into?
Not really.
Wedding-wise, no,
we touch base on a lot of different subjects.
Your
so.
history, it's great. You've come a long way, it sounds like. And
Oh, yeah.
you've been crushing it. And, with next year, you still got some dates open?
Yes, I do have some dates. May, June, and July is pretty much shot. Do have a few in August. September's a little tight because that's our wedding.
Yeah.
And then honeymoon.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. God willing that we just can get there and it's all back to normal.
Sure.
Let's hope so. All right. Well, let people know, where can they find you, your website, all that stuff.
It's www.mkleckphotography.com, facebook.com/Mkleck Photography, at M_Kleck on Instagram.
Yeah, you got an easy handle to find. Ours is a lot of words typed in. It's not up there, but Erie Encore Entertainment, when I try to have people type that out, they're like, wait, what? So, all right, man. Well, thank you so much for coming
absolutely.
in.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
It was fun.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be doing more of these.
Sure.
Yeah.
I look forward to it.
All right, everybody. Thank you again for tuning in. Beyond the Booth. Stay tuned for our next episode. Have a good one. Peace.